decided to do this project because I was a part of a work study that we were asked what was the worst job that we ever had and the wage associated with it. And we were to focus on the wage because we were doing some legislation to increase the minimum wage. And in that study, it was 7 women, all different ethnicities. And the first thing that all of us did was talk about a time that we had worked for another woman that was unfavorable. And the light automatically went off that we were going to align the National Women's History theme, which is moving forward together, celebrating women who educate and inspire generation, that we were going to bring this project to life and change that narrative of what workplace trauma and woman-on-women work experiences has been.
What made me support the project even more is that together we are working on building a community of sisterhood. And that involves opportunity, and opportunity is employment. And so I believed in your vision for the project because I want to make sure that as women grow and advance and these generations are coming behind us, that they have a safe space.
Women are the backbone of the workforce, yet their stories of resilience, trauma, and triumph often go untold. Every woman has a story, a moment where she felt unseen, unheard, undervalued. But together, we are more. Workplaces are often the stage for personal transformation, sometimes through painful experiences. This is the story of women who turned their struggles into strength. We want to get the work done. We want to be productive.
Yes.
We want to answer the call. We want to go above and beyond. As the visionary of this project and creating a safe space means acceptance plus listening minus judgment equals a safe space. We're going to be relatable. We're going to create a space where women can feel seen, heard, and nurtured.
It means listening. It means providing a place where people can breathe, let go, and feel comfortable in themselves, flaws and all.
I had to go inside and check myself. A lot of people don't view themselves the way the world views them. So I think going inside, looking at what I needed, what do I project on people, and checking myself first before I pointed a finger, just assuring that I was showing up with the right energy.
Defining the system was finding my own voice. I had to learn and understand me, my triggers, and what motivated me. Did I know it would define the system? Yes, because I know I'm a force. Period.
I lead with vulnerability and transparency. We have an open door policy for communication. There is nothing that we cannot discuss and talk about. We have conflict resolution, and we open the door to any conversation that's needed to be had.
We owe them an open lane, we owe them education, and we owe them the truth. We have to be honest about our experiences and honest about what's ahead for them.
Community creates a safe space. Knowing that there's someone there to advocate for you that has probably been down the same road as you and can see you for who you are and not who the society tells you that you should be. A safe space is acceptance plus listening minus judgment. I think when you lead with those things, people will step into them.
I think a safe space is just an environment where you feel accepted. Because once you feel accepted, you feel free to step into who you are.
Creating a space where I could just be myself was going to be an environment that works for me. Environments that cause me to lower myself or dim my light, I was not going to be able to thrive in those. And I've always challenged and charged myself when assuring that I was creating spaces for women to be able to show up without any judgment. Take up all of the space that you need, and I will take what's left.
I don't think I had a dream, especially as a Black woman. I was whoever the world told me to be. There was no title, there was no definition. Wherever they pointed for me is where I went and is where I got comfortable. It's not about CEO, boss, leader, and that type of thing in these safe spaces that we create.
I think we focus on the work instead of the title. There is no boundaries in place. There's no barriers for you to cross. We're an open door policy. If you show up, you're like-minded. You believe in sisterhood. You believe that it's enough space for us all. That's when we thrive.
Now, remember from our sister, we learned it's not about like-minded. It's about the hard work.
Yes.
It's about the impact.
Yes.
So it's always going to be work over a word for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Giving up is never an option. I have too many people that rely on me. As a champion of women voices, I can't quit. It's too many people that believe in me. So there's no way that I would ever quit.
I want my legacy to represent resilience. I want my legacy to represent growth. I want my legacy to represent that beauty starts in the inside, and let that shine brighter than what's ahead of them. There have been spaces where I felt like I couldn't grow and couldn't shine and couldn't be myself, but I always felt welcomed as a woman because I know the world needs us.
I knew that we were going to do what we desired. We were going to create what we needed. If there wasn't a place for us, we was going to make a space for us. We make room for each other. We make room for other women to feel comfortable, to come with us, alongside us, not behind us. Mm-hmm. You can even go before us, as long as we all go. As the creators of this project, we knew that we were going to be asking some tough questions. We knew that we were going to be asking women to go back and unravel some trauma, some things that they may or may not have processed already.
I also think as the creators, we found it important and vital to add a licensed therapist to the project is because as women, we're still working on ourselves and becoming whole. And having someone that's educated and trained and really dedicated to the work is important for us. We don't always want to show up as the smartest in the room. And so it's important for people to know that we're growing with them.
By building a personal relationship with them, getting to know what individual safety feels like for them first, figuring out what their boundaries are, figuring out what their language is, how they like to be spoken to, and I make it a very individualized process because everybody needs something different. A woman that came to see me because she was experiencing significant post-traumatic stress as a result of a racist incident that took place at work. We were able to get her out of work by utilizing FMLA. And on her time off, we worked on building rituals and practices that were restorative for her mental health and her emotional health. As a result of our work together, that woman chose to leave her job completely and move to a new country to explore her health and wellness journey. Encouraging them to move from an intuitive place. I lead by telling each individual that they are the expert of themselves, and I am just here to hold space for them while they explore and discover who they want to be. The inability to connect to themselves, the inability to acknowledge or embody even feeling and expressing their emotions. I see women navigating severe anxiety, depression, PTSD, their voice being silenced, and more than anything, women just not knowing who they are because they've always had to live their life on somebody else's terms. The way that I cultivate healing through those challenges is by first creating a safe space for individuals to get to the root of the issue. Once we have established that it is a safe space, I then start teaching individuals how to express what they are feeling. I help them identify where it lives in their body. And then we create individualized practices and regimens that help them move things through their system and helps them create a more restorative practice and lifestyle for themselves. Being very patient with their process. I always lead with the fact that I believe in gentle accountability. And so I let them take their time with opening up. I honor their boundaries. I am consistent and I am present. If you show up and you want to be silent, I hold space for that. If you show up and you want to lead the session, I hold space for that. And so more than anything, I honor the person in front of me, and that develops trust.
The first moment I really realized that I can make a difference was when I first got in this seat. A young boy, he was shot while raking leaves, and his mom came to me and she said, "I just want you to pass legislation for a camera incentive program," because to this day they never found who killed her son. And we passed it and we funded it, and it wasn't for me, but that mother felt like she did something that didn't allow her son's murder to be in vain. That's when I knew, oh, I'm gonna do this job and I'm gonna do it fiercely and loudly and boldly because my residents deserve that. I feel like everyone panicked. I mean, I am someone that feels like, who can tell me no? And if I have a position of power, I'm gonna push it to the edge. And I think that's how everyone should serve. And so a lot of lobbyists and special interests, they were worried, and even some of my colleagues, because I was breaking the status quo. But I think that's what amazing women do. I really felt inspired to sponsor this project, not just because it was about women and centering women and creating a space to hear women's voices, but because of the two women behind the project. I feel like they're intelligent and passionate, and they really center God in everything that they do, and I can feel that, and that resonates with me. And it's all about pouring into women so that they can pour into other people.
I want to start with hearing about your earlier work experiences. Are there some experiences that you can share that kind of tailored your leadership skill?
The earlier side of my career, probably wasn't the best, right? I usually was the only female or the only person of color in a space. And so I don't even know if it was so much they made me feel uncomfortable or I didn't feel comfortable in my own skin, but having people that really mentored me and didn't let me settle for less really shaped my leadership style now.
How did you take those feelings of feeling like you weren't enough or feeling uncomfortable in that space and shift it to motivate you into heading towards leadership?
It took the outside world around me and things that were happening, honestly, to really shift how I felt about myself. I'll never forget after the murder of George Floyd and, really getting involved in like the Black Lives Matter and advocacy. And I just felt like this huge need to be like boldly and unapologetically myself in every single space. And it allowed me to shed whatever box I was putting myself in because of what stereotypes I thought I had to be in corporate America. And I realized it didn't make a lot of people happy, but I loved the version of myself I was, and it really didn't matter what they thought. And so I try to bring that into my leadership style. I am unapologetic about how I show up. I have high standards. I think that's important. I want to push my team to be the best, but I also want them to have bold voices and be the same way, not be apologetic about how they show up in their leadership.
I would love to hear about some of the feedback you have received from your team, how they experience you, and some of the ways that you work to make your work environment inclusive.
I wouldn't say they experience a different version of me, but because of how they show up, they take me differently, right? So I think, for example, my chief of staff, I feel like we've built a friendship, and she's always tells me that she feels empowered to speak up and be bold. And I feel like there's some people that my style might land a little aggressive or like I'm being hard on them. But really it comes from, if I see potential, I push for it. I push for excellence. And I think sometimes in a culture, especially for women and as Black women, there's this struggle with, am I being too aggressive? I'm being too loud, and am I pushing too hard? And how are they going to label me if I show up that way? But I feel like I have every right to want excellence.
What would you say is your biggest challenge as a leader?
My ego. I think that's like the biggest challenge for me, because when you do step into your confidence and you step into this space where, no one can tell you you can't succeed. No one can tell you that you can't do it. Then you have to make sure that doesn't creep into something else.
What is mentorship to you? What does that mean?
I feel like mentorship to me is providing whatever that person needs to get where they want to go. If I feel like someone might need to be loud, right, and they need to be strong and bold, then it means I need to create situations for them to do that, right? Push them outside of their comfort zone to get that, because people have to feel safe to fail in front of you.
What would you say to a woman that wants to step into leadership but is being held back by fear?
Just jump. Honestly, success is always on the other side of an uncomfortable situation, conversation, or moment. And so if you're not willing to be uncomfortable, then you're not willing to be successful. If you're not willing to be uncomfortable, you're not willing to grow and be a better version of yourself.
Yeah. How do you bounce back from failure? What does it look like to put the pieces back together?
It looks like allowing yourself to feel it 100%. Because I think sometimes people want to mask the feeling. I'll never forget, after I lost my first race, I cried in the bathroom in the shower. Like, there were days I just cried, right? I was like replaying every little thing I could have done differently, learned from it. And that's the key too. I think sometimes people don't learn from whatever. For me, I'm spiritual. For whatever God had in that failure, it's just God teaching you something. You learn this as you get older. The things that I failed at were the best things that ever happened to me. Like, my first marriage was a failure, but I thank God for that because my husband now is amazing.
How do you want your team and your staff and everyone that is connected to you and under you, how do you want them to feel?
Powerful, intelligent, capable. It's really important for me to people not to feel like this is the end for them. Because I think a lot of times people get stuck in a position and they keep on going. I want people to see beyond where they're working with me.
What does success mean for you as a Black woman in leadership?
People being impacted by the way I show up, the things that I do, how I live my life. The way I show up also has to me, be godly in a way. Yeah. Like, if people think I'm mean-spirited or I show up in an ugly way, I can't be successful in that. And so those two things are like intertwined to me.
Can you share 3 qualities that you think make a person a great leader?
I think compassion is the first thing. If you can't feel or understand the people that serve you as when you're leading them, a willingness of sacrifice. You have to be willing to do everything that you ask your team to do. And you have to be willing to do more than you ask your team to do. And I think wisdom. I think the ability to learn, to continuously evolve and grow, not intellect, right? Knowing everything, but wisdom, learning from everything.
Any last words that you want to leave with us about leadership?
The first thing you have to do is be willing to follow. That's how I've always felt. Like, if you want to be a great leader, be someone that can learn how to follow. Don't be scared to show up fully yourself and have the same audacity as, men walk through life with. We need to show up in the exact same way.
How are you? Good seeing you.
I want to start with learning a little bit about your past work experiences and how they shaped your belief system around leadership. So are there any direct moments or experiences that jump out to you?
Being in the government for over 20 some years and working under Black management, Black female, I've always noticed that there was a difference in the culture and how one set of employees was treated as opposed to the other set as Afro-Americans. With leadership, one culture with promotions and, around annual time of getting bonuses and, sending them overseas for training, as opposed to the leadership that I was under. Everything was limited. And it didn't have to be that way, limited. We would put in a request just like the other cultures, but the response would be different. Especially for myself, speaking for myself. And, I used to look at that like, what's the difference? We're all together. Why is it that I can't have the same opportunities? That there said to me, as I move up in the government, if and when it ever happens, some of the things I wanted to do from the other culture, but then from what I've seen from my supervisor, those were the things that would not happen in leadership.
Was there ever a time where you felt unsupported in your work environment? Was there ever a time where you wanted to move up or you wanted to see yourself grow and you just felt unsupported?
Oh, most definitely. A supervisory position came open and I was like, I can do that. When you're young, you frisky, and I'm like, yeah, I got that. And so I went to my supervisor, sat down, talked to her. Mind you, this is a sister. So just because she's a sister, that doesn't mean, I'm going to you as for special, treatment or anything. I always did things in order. You know what I'm saying? So went to her, I thought everything out beforehand and said, hey, there's a position that has come open and I'm interested. Do you mind, can I apply for you? We had to get permission. And she said to me immediately, "You're not supervisory material." I left out her office. We had other words. I'll never forget, a friend of mine's, Christopher Simmons, I went to his desk and expressed to him, him being a man, I didn't want to show no tears, my real emotions, but I was hurt. And so he was like, "Well, T, maybe it's not your time or your season, but I left from him. It didn't settle in my gut at all. So I went to a friend of mine's that worked in there, a girlfriend of mine's, and I said, I really wanted to apply for this position. She just said to me I wasn't management material. And back then, I was always doing women empowerment type things, Didn't realize, once again, how powerful I was, but I was doing it just because. It weighed on me so bad that it stopped me. It was so many other times I wanted to apply for leadership, for upper mobility, just to move further in my career. And just that piece of her saying I wasn't management material, it set me back. Yeah. And I want to say it set me back maybe about 15 years. 15 years where I could have been promoted in the federal government.
Tell me more about what shifted in you after that conversation with her. I hear you saying that it set you back. What was the impact? Like, how did it shift you mentally?
Childhood trauma. Immediately when she said I wasn't supervisory material, something, like I said, my gut, it instantly got sick, I'm assuming from what I can remember, because when you deal with childhood trauma, you hear, smell, see, feel anything that reminds you of something somebody has said to you to make you feel inadequate or that throw you off. And that was one of my high moments. Like I said, I was young and I was feeling good. But that right there, like I said, it took me back. It was a trigger, childhood trauma. And I hadn't dealt with my childhood trauma at that time. I believe the breaking point, to be honest, is when we were going through COVID. I suffered a mild stroke. My supervisor was on me like white on rice. And I know people would say, "Well, why did you even stay?" I had a lot of people say, "Well, why would you even stay?" All I know is God had me there for whatever reason. And from the other culture, I would hear like, "You are such an angel. I would get so much kudos and love and all of this. But this woman truly had she had a hook in me. It was like, I can't explain it, but it was devilish. And I couldn't find my way out of it. But then too, I said, God has something to do with this. The hurt that she was causing me, God would allow me to come back and see her go through X, Y, and Z for whatever reason. When things would happen, you know who she come to? To me. I would be the savior.
Do you think your expectations of your supervisor were shaped around her being a Black woman?
I've always believed in, regardless of what I've been through, like, I'm my sister's keeper. Whatever it is you need, I'm there for you. So it wasn't that I was expecting that, because I worked my A off. I was getting, awards and from the other culture as things started progressing. But as a sister, I was like, is this really happening? Like, I give you the utmost respect. I don't expect nothing from you. When we're in front of other cultures, I speak highly. I take whatever it is you need or they need of her, I'm right there. I was right there. And I feel like if my supervisor had been genuine, everything that came out of her mouth was a lie. She would tell me things that they said. I said, oh, they did? But when I caught on, guess what? I would go back today to the managers. And I say, I'm going to put this on the line, because I'm tired of them, they coming to you saying about me. And they said, that's not true. That's so not true. We don't have to do that to each other. Yeah.
What are some of the tools you use to grow and evolve as a leader that may have been birthed from this incident?
Therapy was number one. Working on myself, trying to figure out a lot of what I dealt with my supervisor. I had to dig deep on why I sat under that. Why did I tolerate the behavior that she opposed on me? Why did I accept the abuse? Why did I accept the bullying? All of that. I took in a lot.
Yeah.
Abuse. And coming through therapy, I realized that a lot of that had to, with my childhood. So on one end, I was taught that you respect your elders, you respect your whatever. You just respect people. I was taught that. But on the other end, I wasn't taught to say no. I wasn't taught that no was a complete sentence. I wasn't taught boundaries. What were boundaries? Boundaries are what? Okay, she my supervisor. So she said X, Y, and Z. I must do it. Get it done or whatever, regardless of the price on my mental, my emotions, my physical. I took the hit for all of it.
I'm curious about how it's shaped your definition of mentorship.
The pieces that I miss, I make sure that now I see the women that are around me, they're well taken care of, because that's something that I like. It's like my love language. So your love language is something that part to me is the things that you didn't get, I didn't get back then.
Yeah.
And so my love language is to love on folks, make people feel wanted, make people feel acknowledged, make people feel like yes, if don't nobody else hear you, I hear you. And I have a superpower of, you could have said something to me 30 years ago and I could run it right back to you. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So these women that I talk to, they, at work and in the workplace, now that I'm in the position that I'm in, I sit and I see, I'm a filler, so I see people's gifts. So I run it back to them, whether they see it or not. I make sure they see it. They miss things. I said, nope, here you go. You're going to do this training. But I don't want to, being on Zoom, I'm not comfortable. Yes, you are. You're going to be okay. I'm right here. I overcame all of that. Yeah, I suffered a mild stroke, but I'm still standing. God, that was a wake-up call. He was like, child, hello, how much more you gonna take it as her calling you? She don't send emails, she call you, so it's no tracking mechanism, right? So how much more of this are you gonna take? Stop it. I got out the hospital after the stroke. She called me yakking, and she talked loud and aggressive. And I heard her sweet daughter in the background say, "Ma, that woman just got out the hospital."
Yeah.
But because of all that I've been through, and I didn't have boundaries and, all that stuff, but therapy. So after going to therapy, doing right in between that time, right after the stroke, therapy and acupuncture, just working on self, that's how I learned boundaries after all this time. Boundaries. And I learned that no is a complete sentence.
What does it look like for you to cultivate a safe workplace now?
Number one is the individual's well-being. The mental health, like we're going through now, like, jobs, people being let off. We let two of our employees was fired a couple of weeks ago. Emotionally, that bothered me, but I was able to catch myself, get myself together, and, reach out to those individuals. And, number one was to make sure their mental health was okay. I've been down that road.
Yeah.
So I don't ever want to mistreat nobody, no woman, no man, no nothing. I'm all about how you doing first before the job.
And I can assure you anything.
And that's a leadership trait in itself.
wanting to be in leadership, honestly, was never my desire. I've always been the type of person like, I'll help someone else be great. I'll help someone else build their brand. They'll, build their business, what have you. And so it was never something that I sought out to do or to be a part of. I think that I've always had the mindset to just be in the background. The leadership that I had just did not seem functional. And so it wasn't until I left that particular organization and went into another role where I kind of was pushed into a leadership position where, I just really honed in on leadership skills. So being as though I worked at an organization for about 10 years where I watched how other people led teams and, the organization as a whole, and was just able to pick out some things like, oh, I don't like that. Or, I wouldn't treat people like that, or I wouldn't talk like that, or I wouldn't show up like that, and so when I, like I said, was pushed into a leadership role, it was just more one of those things that I just kind of adapted to, like, okay, well, I'm not going to act like that because I remember from the previous organization how they acted.
When you actually stepped into leadership, what was that experience like for you? Did you feel supported? Was there mentorship?
There wasn't any. It was definitely trial by fire. It was more or less a come in, this is what I need to get done. This is the expectation that I have for you to pretty much rise to the occasion and get it done. So it wasn't a lot of leadership in the sense of mentoring.
Tell me about some of the things that have come up for you as a leader, like some of the challenges you've experienced.
So I'm very personable. I am someone who likes to treat people the way I want to be treated. And so unfortunately, I've been with leadership that does not have that type of mindset. More of a directive, more of a dictator, more of a, we're not friends, I'm your boss, type of thing. And that's just not really who I am. I like to, meet people where they are. I like to lead from the front. And so with that, the challenges that I faced were, having this expectation of me to show up as someone that I'm not. It was just such a challenging time when I was expected to be someone that I wasn't.
How did you navigate that? What did it look like for you to choose you, to honor you in those situations?
It was challenging. I don't know another way to put it. It was very hard to be authentic. But it was kind of like a catch-22 because it's like you want to excel in your career and you want to show up and, do what's expected and asked of you. But you also have to, be who you are. At times it felt lonely. I felt isolated. I felt like the odd man out, because I felt as if I was kind of dancing to my own beat. I wasn't going with, the flow of everything else and everyone else and, what they wanted. I have definitely dealt with stress, inability to sleep, poor diet, depression, anxiety, all tied to just workplace dynamics and not something that was easy to, cope with, so to speak. Just really trying to navigate through all of those different emotions at the same time.
As you were in that situation and as you were navigating it, what was it teaching you about yourself?
So you know how they say, like, there's the 5 stages of grief. Yeah. And I felt as if I went through every single one. There were moments where I was sad. There were moments where I was happy, happy in the sense of today was a good day, essentially. There were moments where I just simply did not understand. I was so upset. I was so angry. I felt confused.
I'm wanting to know how those things spilled over into your personal life and how they personally affected you.
What I was feeling, the depression, the anxiety, all of that, not only had me feeling as if I was on edge professionally, but also personally. It just put me in a place of isolation at one point, not really wanting to engage with family and friends. I felt at one particular time in that season that I was a failure. I felt as if I just had this billboard, on me that said failure. And so with that, it caused me to isolate. I felt as if I I didn't want to be around anyone because I didn't want anyone to see me, if you will. It felt like what I was dealing with internally, I felt like people could see that externally. And of course, I knew that was all in my head, but that was just how I felt. And so personally, it definitely took a toll in my personal life because I just wasn't who I had been in the past.
Yeah. Was there ever a time where you felt silenced or unsafe or even small in the workplace?
So I've experienced, like you said, feeling small, just feeling or being told that I wasn't doing good, or I wasn't rising to the occasion, or I wasn't setting the proper tone as a leader, or this could have been done better, or that could have been done better. And so it just birthed this feeling of not being able to do anything right. Therapy, prayer. I had a small circle of people that I felt comfortable confiding in. So just making sure that I was confiding in the right people, not people who I just wanted to vent to or just wanted to be in my business, or to spectate into what's going on in my life. That core group of people to really, really, be able to correct me if, my thoughts were wrong, to celebrate me, to love on me, to, remind me, of who I was. So, that really was what kind of helped me get from A to B, therapy, good friends, close, confidants.
Do you feel like you have gotten to a restorative place?
Definitely a lot better. I'm not second guessing if I should go in the store or not. Like I shared before, feeling like I had this billboard in front of me of failure.
What were some of the sacrifices you had to make to get back to that place of wellness?
Boundaries, walking away from people, family included, walking away from things that no longer served me, things that caused me to feel like I wasn't enough, things that caused me to feel inadequate in a sense, so just really implementing boundaries, really reminding myself, no longer waiting for someone to remind me of who I was, but really reminding myself of who I was.
Do you feel like you grew as a leader?
I am committed not to treating people that work for me the way that I was treated when I worked for someone else. Absolutely.
What does it look like for you to cultivate a safe work environment?
Communication, transparency, patience, being able to correct my staff when they've done something wrong, but offering grace. Mistakes it's inevitable. People are going to make mistakes. It feels reassuring to be safe, to have a voice, to no longer be afraid to use my voice, knowing that there are other women who are on the same path, that want, just fairness across the board, to be seen, to be heard, to be valued.
Take one and action.
Well, I was pretty much telling you that I was born crippled. And as a result of being born crippled, my parents had to put me in things to just make me look like a normal human being by having my legs broken out. So things like tap dancing, ballet, you name it, horseback riding. And that deformity is what became the catalyst and the enzyme to make me become a warrior. I have two experiences that I remember very well. One of them is being the only woman invited to sit at the table of promoters. Promoting usually is a job that is centered around men and has been for years. And when I realized I was the only woman invited to sit there when I was looking for other women like myself, I knew that this became a business that was really geared towards male dominance, even down to having to buy the facilities to bring events through those particular arenas. We were not given the same opportunities. Now, the second experience is I am now an apostle. Was there anything anything I aspired to be. It was just something that God did. But when I was initially licensed as a reverend to preach, there were only 2 women at that time that were licensed, and I was invited in pulpits, but uninvited until the anointing dropped in the room. Then some of the older men who were part of the old boys network would tell me, good job, daughter, just keep on doing what you're doing. They wouldn't address me as a minister or a reverend or a pastor, just good job, daughter, keep doing what you're doing. Ooh, I was a teacher, and I remember being called over the loudspeaker, and the principal actually was a woman, so I thought she had my back. And when I was called over the loudspeaker, I was escorted into her office, and when I went into the office, her secretary closed the door only for me to see a mother, a very tall, rough type individual, waiting to actually beat my tail. So the principal sat at the table and allowed the accusations, the persecution, the sabotagement, the attacks to come at me. And at that point, I wasn't as thick as I am right now. So I had to hold my ground against a woman about 6'2", had a mindset to rip me up because I gave her child an F. And my principal, who was supposed to protect me as a teacher, did not. She just sat back to wait for the show. I won't say someone actually just told me a lie. It was a thought process. I thought that as I was escalating up the ladder or trying to aspire to a certain point, that women would help one another. But what I found out, so it was a lie in my own mindset, was that there was a lot of competition, there was a lot of backbiting, there were a lot of doors that were shut, there was a nepotism, doors being open to people that were in a clique, very cliquish. And as a younger person trying to thrive and excel in another realm, there were many women that did not want me to take their position, so they thought. And I wasn't trying to take their position. I was really trying to go to the position that God had for me. I never played by the rules because the rules may require you to sleep with somebody. The rules may, and I've had those type of propositions many times. I've had people show up at my hotel because they paid someone who was a cleaner to let them in the room. I've lost jobs because I wouldn't sleep with someone. So I never really played by the rules of deception, the rules of manipulation, the usury spirit, the cliquish, the nepotism. I never did that. What I had to do, as I told you, from a young child, being born crippled and also with eyes that swung in opposite directions, the deformity was the enzyme that made me strive harder. So I always had to be 7 to 10 steps ahead of the next person, especially if it was a man. And that's where my fight and my drive comes from. Oh, most definitely, and I hate to really talk about it because it's sad. I snapped because of some women. I used to do empowering conferences. I would spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 out of my own pocket. Prime example, one was called God's Women in Music, Ministry, Business, and Entertainment. And these conferences would provide resources for the women. So if you wanted to be a book author, I would bring in publishers. If you wanted a recording contract, I would bring in record execs. If you wanted to do a movie, then I would have people from networks come in. But what I found out after spending my money on a vision God had given me, people would network one with another, then have their own conferences and wouldn't include me, invite me, or even mention it to me. And I'd find out about it on flyers on IG or flyers on Facebook or whatever that media platform was. So that was a very disheartening thing. So I said, you know what, God, I'm not doing another one. And the Lord said, you're going to do it if I tell you to do it. I did not think it would change everything. I really wasn't trying to change a system. I was trying to create a system within a system because the system had been existing for so long. So I was trying to create an atmosphere or a space so other women like myself could thrive. As a result of not wanting to fight the system, I was fighting the system. People People most definitely turned on me because I was always about trying to work extra hard or trying to be ahead of the game. And a lot of times it meant to be silent. It meant to go in a room where they only wanted to utilize your gifting or your anointing, but they really didn't want you to speak. They really didn't want you to have a platform. So when I started speaking up for myself, then it became a problem. And even with some of my clients, because my clients thought the world revolved around them. I didn't have a life. I didn't have a calling, that I was to serve them consistently. And I had to tell my clients, Apostle has a calling too. Veryl has a calling too. Dr. Veryl has a calling. And you all cannot continuously try to minimize me. So I'm going to sow into you and your gifting and your purpose. And I'm just asking you to be lenient on what God has called me to do. Definitely, friends, I believe that some people are not supposed to go with you in every season. They're different realms, different times, and some people cannot handle your success. So one of the examples was I had to start doing NDAs, even with my clients or anyone I employed, as well as non-compete clauses, because people would try to take my contacts. They would try to take my client. They even would mimic my contracts when I would expose them to people on various levels. So with that being the case, I had to sever some relationships because they weren't healthy. They were usury, spirited relationships. And I'm about empowering someone else and give and take on both ends. So yes, certain seasons, even now, there's been a shedding of who goes with me to the next level or whatever God will have me to do at this point. And I understood that because sometimes it became dead weight or it became draining. That just happened to me very recently. So I want to share that experience, and I'm going to even say her name. There's a woman, her name is Tiarra McGee. She is a major executive of a record company. She has been of many. You've heard of Veryl, Sony, you name it. And she's like an icon in the industry. She is now the president of a major film division. And so recently I was talking to her about negotiating one of my artists to be on her label. And she said to me, she said, Veryl, I've been watching you over the years. I've been watching your grind. And she said, you know what? You deserve it. You deserve the shift. You deserve the blessing. We have watched what you had to go through to get to this point. And she said she was a silent supporter. So you never know who's watching you. You never know who's supporting you. You never know who's praying for you, who is your cheerleader. And I found out after probably 30 years of being in the business that she was one of my cheerleaders. When I see other people get blessed from my work, because I ask God, why am I always the one to help other people go from one realm to the next? Why isn't anybody else doing it for me? Why have I always had to fight? And then the Lord said, I made you a midwife to help women birth and to help people find their purpose and to go and escalate from one dimension to the next. I've given you the tools. I've opened up doors. I've opened up countries. I've opened up platforms. But it's not necessarily for you. It's to help somebody else that has to go through the platform. I would say the prophetic prayer line was one of the things where women could come on the line confidentially and they could share some of their issues and problems, and we would have people who were trained to pray with them, counselors as well as ministers, elders, pastors, to help them get out of their dilemmas. We've had women who have been abused, women who were molested, never said anything. I even did a call privately for women who were being tormented from abortions, and they were carrying deep, dark type of regret for aborting their babies. So these private environments where they can talk and we can pray with them was something that the Lord led me to create. They didn't panic. People were happy for change. And if there was any opposition, that's the enemy. They didn't want to see us thrust and thrive and see people get delivered, because it was about women getting free of pain and hurt from years, months, decades. And so we pretty much were providing an opportunity for them to come out of their past and step into their destiny. Actually, I didn't build the power for myself. I just listened to the plan that God had given me. I wrote down the plan as it says in the book of Habakkuk. And then every step he told me, that's what I took, because I knew it was going to be challenging. I knew some of the places, the doors were going to be shut with locks and keys that were thrown away. I knew that there were some people who would not help me get from point A to point B. So God had to give me the game plan. How do you get here? How do you meet prime ministers? How do you get to this country? How do you develop this program? And so he gave me the master plan, and he was the one that created the power, because once he set the platform and the platform was successful, then the others would gravitate to you, because at that time they want to know, how did you get from point A to point B? Even my enemies. Years, stress, you can't get that back. Sleepless nights, and even decisions that were bad decisions in which I needed reformation after those decisions were made. Some of them I had to go to God and ask him to forgive me, because when you're an entrepreneur and you're in an industry where you don't have a 9-to-5, not a stable paycheck, you got to make sure you don't compromise your values, your morals. And there were times when it became a negative bank account. And I had to make sure I made the right decisions that I would not regret later. Well, there's been plenty of moments where I felt like giving up. Plenty of moments where I just needed a breather. Plenty of moments where I needed to regroup. I needed to reset. I was exhausted. Plenty of moments where I didn't do it the way God had given it to me, and I was just running out of energy. Plenty of moments where I didn't feel like I was supported. I didn't feel like the woman that I thought would hold my arms up was there. This is why I had to do the non-compete clauses. Just plenty of those moments where it looked like it wasn't prospering. But in the meantime, that was just part of my journey, making me stronger, making me a warrior, making me endure, telling me to keep on fighting. Somebody wants you to give up, so you're not going to give in to the plan of the enemy. You got to stand strong. And that became the pushing factor to make me keep going on. I trusted God more than I did man slamming a door in my face. I think women need to help other women. I think we need to not be afraid for someone to surpass us, for someone to soar. I think our gifts, our talents, our tools, the things that we have access to, that we are to share. If there's a young girl that says, I want to do what you do, then take her up under your wings. Show her how you got there. Even if somebody didn't help you, show her so she can do it a little easier. Our resources. I just think we need to be more empathetic over somebody else's dream and not think it's competition. And be excited when our sister is doing something great. Be elated. Be our sister's cheerleader. Give her a high five. Congratulate her. Tell it. Women don't even want to tell each other they look good. You know, it's that serious. So just be more of an encourager so the ones behind us, the successors, can pick this baton up, run the race, and win like a champion. Well, a lot of them are lost right now. A lot of things that our ancestors have worked for, and I'm talking about women, you know, with respect to fighting for rights to vote, fighting for rights to go to school, fighting for rights to dress a certain way. A lot of those things, these younger girls have taken for granted, and I don't think there's enough motherly type of love among women trying to help shift the younger generation into their next. We judge them, we don't help them, we talk about them. This is why young ladies dress like they're on a strip pole, because no woman has taken them and said, baby, you know, you can't get that job the way you look. This is why no woman has taken a younger woman that they see potential in up under their arms at the church, because they're too busy judging them, so they run out of the house of the Lord. So it's going to look like a generation that is definitely lost with no direction. My safety comes from God. I have to say that. But the world that we are fighting for is one that there's no empathy for your neighbor. There's a lack of that neighborhood support, even with the child in the neighborhood. There's no empathy for your friend on the job, your girlfriend, your family. It's become a very cold society that we live in. It's become a very manipulative society, deceitful, competitive society. And I think a lot of it is we have lost our first love, which is God. We need to get back to some compassion, some understanding. We need to get back to wanting to see other people excel. We need to ignite our brothers and sisters. We need to cheer them on. And if we don't do that at the rate we're going right now, I mean, you got brothers killing up brothers, sisters cussing out sisters. It's just crazy right now. So we don't get it together real soon, we're on our way to destruction.
Were there any experiences that you can recall that may have shaped your belief system around leadership?
I think I started my career like in public service and politics, luckily in office that was run by a Black woman. So I started for a state senator, and she kind of just really modeled leading with grace and authority, but also just being on top of it looked like. And so kind of seeing someone who was like at the top of their game and learning from that was just such a pivotal first experience for me.
Who is PK as a leader?
I think thinking of myself as a leader kind of encompasses, I think, all different parts of my life. Like I said, like being first gen is a really big part of my life, right? Because it means I don't have a lot of family close by and all of that. And so I think from a young age also being an only child, I've always kind of had this independence to me. And so that independence obviously lends itself to my leadership style, but I've also had to really rely on community and building community, right? Because I don't have that built-in community. And so for me, it's always been being a leader that's accepting to others and kind of being willing to step out there when I see someone who's shy in a room and kind of sparking that conversation.
How do you navigate staying true to you in this field?
People come to government or come to like nonprofits or whatever when they're not necessarily always having their best day. And the honest truth is you can't always solve every problem. But I really live kind of by this motto that I think we're all superheroes. And so finding out what your superpower is and amplifying that to help someone is like, might be that little step, that little push, that little thing that they need. So you might not be able to like, solve world hunger in one day, but you could get that one person, the benefits that they need so that their family is not hungry. You could help them keep their lights on. You can help them get internet so their kids can learn.
What representation means to you in the space that you're in?
Sometimes I try to pretend like it doesn't like have an impact, but I think sometimes when I sit back and I think about just being in rooms where you're not only the only woman, you're the only person of color, it's hard. But what actually helps me is knowing that I'm important to me in that room, because all those other people that don't look like me, that don't sound like me, that don't come from backgrounds like me aren't in that room. And so if I don't sometimes put the imposter syndrome to the side and step up and know that I belong in that room, those people aren't getting advocated for, right? And they're getting left behind, and that's not right. I think for any woman in the workplace, especially Black women, there's microaggressions that we face that people might dismiss or think that we're so far gone from. But I tell people all the time, people run into me in the office and they'll think I'm someone's secretary, and they'll think I'm like, I'm an intern, I don't know, whatever. They just don't think of that role and think of me in it. There's so many times where I've gotten emails where like someone misgenders me or people misspell my name multiple times. It's normal to like be annoyed by that or to like just blow it off. But sometimes we have to correct people, right? So that they're not passive and just doing whatever they think is the norm.
Where does your courage come from?
Well, I'm a person of faith. So I grew up with faith instilled in my parents, and I just rely a lot on the Lord for guidance. There's nothing that I do by myself. And I know that there's people depending on me showing up. So I got to make sure that I'm good, right? So whether that's, through prayer every morning and meditation and taking time for myself and just slowing down, because the work is always going to be there. But if I don't have that strength and I'm not replenishing my vessel, I can't help other people.
What does mentorship mean to you, and how has it played a role in your journey?
When you're younger or an earlier part of your career, and that it's always someone who's, older, or someone who is in a further part in their career. But I've had mentors that are throughout my career and have stayed with me, right? And some of those mentors now are in roles that would be considered more junior than I am, but I still go to them and look at them. You get different things from different people, but at the same time, it's important that you pour that back in, right? Someone is giving you that and someone's helping you through that guidance, whether it's you have a really tough decision to make at work, or even something. I've had mentors that understand what it's like to be in these spaces and the effect it has on your personal life. So being able to go to them and bounce ideas off of that. But at the same time, reaching back and helping someone else, right? Because there's all these people pouring into me, but I need to pour into the next generation, right? And so, just keeping the goal going and helping folks.
What are some of the things that you do present day to help cultivate a safe work environment?
Just checking in on people and making sure we can have regular check-ins, that people know there's a safe space. So in my office now, you can come in at any point in the day and there'll be 3 or 4 people just simply taking a moment for rest, right? Because the work is so heavy, and we essentially in politics, to be honest with you live and work in a glass bowl. So every step and everything you're doing is being monitored and viewed by everyone. Whatever you say could be misconstrued or whatever. So knowing that they can come into my office, they can have, some popcorn, there's coffee, tea, and we can just kind of just relax and just let your hair down for a second and not feel like you're under judgment.
If there is a woman that wants to step into leadership but fear is holding her back, what words of wisdom would you give her?
I always like to use the analogy of a chandelier, right? So we all look at a chandelier and it's really pretty and it's glowing, and but it's not one piece, right, that makes it glow. And every piece is unique and different. And so whatever fears that you have that, maybe I don't have experience in this, I don't come from this background, I don't have these connections, think of that almost as something that makes you more different and more unique and adds to your story. You're bringing something that someone else who might have those connections or that experience might not have.
Are there any last words that you want to share about leadership, or anything that is important about your journey?
I think when I was younger, I always thought of there's a dream job, I want to do this, and then you're okay, I've done this. And that happened to me early in my career. The roles I've had, I thought, oh, I want to do this when I'm older. So I thought when I was 50, but when you hit it when you're 27, you got to learn that you always have to reinvent yourself. And so whether it's in politics, public service, or business, you're constantly having to reinvent, reevaluate, and grow as a leader, right? And that's what makes leadership fun and great, right? It's the ability to take stock internally and see how you can adapt to your situation, your environment, your growth, and remodel your leadership to whatever new challenges you're facing.
I started working my first job at 14, and I started working with kids and just the livelihood of that, and then decided I wanted to go more into corporate America and things. My mom, she's worked for the government, or she works for the government for years, so I thought that was going to be my work. But I was no, I don't know if I want to do that. But my work experiences have varied, is my point. Just from starting out, in high school, and then going, getting older. And my first real job in corporate America was working as an administrative assistant or secretary in radio. It was a mostly all white station, mostly all white employees, leadership, etc. I had this manager or supervisor. He actually was one of the top guys there. He was a really passively aggressive, but had a little bit of racism with them. You know, just with his remarks, you know, whether he would come in, like, I'm the first person you see when you walk in the door. So he would have like these little sly comments, you know, whether it's about my hair or try to, you know, talk slang. And it was just really off-putting. But I, you know, just smiled through it. Really didn't know how to respond, you know, aside from just being quiet and just, okay, this is my job. I don't want to lose my job, that type of thing.
So it sounds like those earlier experiences really shaped your belief system around leadership.
I know what's right, what's wrong, you know, and so I think for me also, and not just even my experiences, I'm a huge empath. So just kind of seeing everyone else's experiences around me was also one of those things, like, I'm not going to treat people like that. I felt as though I was just doing what I was told, if that makes sense. Like, I was just, you know, whether it was from my mom, because I was still, you know, at home earlier then. And my mom really, really stressed education. She really stressed having an education. She really stressed, she was actually someone who I looked up to in regards to teaching me how to work in certain situations. I would notice, like, how different people would act in the office. And we're like, okay, well, maybe I should change. Maybe I should do this or try this. And it was very interesting. But
so trying to find your way.
Trying to find my way.
Exactly.
Exactly. Trying to find my way by mimicking other people. And I was able to actually be promoted throughout that company several times, then moved on to really becoming a leader in another company years later, maybe probably almost a decade later or so. Before I was in that position, I had left a toxic environment. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm getting out of this and I'm going into this new opportunity. I'm a leader. This is what I went to school for. This is what I've been working so hard for. And I ended up walking right back into another toxic environment. So I feel like there were so many triggers that happened. And I'm thinking, okay, I got this job. I have the part, so to speak, you know. No one can take that from me. I have the part. But I didn't realize, like, no, you're going to have to go up against a lot, you know, emotionally, definitely emotionally, because not only did I have the part, but there were several other people that were around me that wanted my position. And so I stepped into an environment where I had people that I was supposed to oversee, and they just automatically just didn't like me. And for me, that just triggered that kind of reactive response to where I was just like, oh, okay. I feel like it diminished my leadership role at first, because I was so in this defense mode of, like, you know, I have to prove myself, or more so like just shut down. Every single day felt like having to constantly prove yourself, constantly go out to war. Nobody wants to constantly feel like they have to go to war every single day. Like, that's not what I signed up for. So
what pushed you to the verge of stepping away?
I was really, really stressed. Like, it really brought me to a breaking point, to where I had to take some time away from that company. Like, I had to take medical leave. Like, that's just how bad it got. I don't think I want to manage people anymore. I'd rather just manage projects and just be in my own little shell. I don't want to have my energy affected by anybody else. I just want to protect whatever piece that I may have or what have you. The thing about it is, I felt as though everything that I worked hard for, I just pretty much just threw it away. You know? And it sucks to kind of be put in that position, or to even put yourself in that position. So where you feel as though, damn, I did all this, all these hours, all this time, and here I am just throwing it away. But at the same token, I felt at peace though, too, with it, because it wasn't all of that lingering over me. But there were always still those questions like, you know, you could be doing better. You know, you could be doing more. You know that you are capable of doing more. Why aren't you stepping up? Why don't you want to do that? And then I'm like, I just completely just shut down off of it.
So would you say that the experiences you had stole your confidence?
Oh, yeah.
Self-worth?
I feel as though it definitely triggered, you know, rejection. How you were brought up, or when you think about just certain situations, it definitely triggered a lot of just rejection. I kind of want to say a little bit of abandonment, because not having people to support you, not having people to have your back when you have their back, or when you feel as though you should have people's back, just made me feel as though, okay, I don't think I'm capable. It really lowered my confidence into feeling as though I couldn't do what I knew I could do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. In hindsight, how do you think this version of Ty would have navigated being in those toxic work environments?
I think it's just more so managing my emotions, managing my attitude, not being ready to go at somebody's throat if they say XYZ, being able to curse people out in a professional way. I learned how to master that, to where it was just like, okay, you know. So I think I wouldn't change how I led my team necessarily. I think I would just change like how I managed initially in the beginning of, you know, the conflict, like managing the conflict a little bit better.
Okay.
And those are things that I still, like, I think it's a constant just kind of reminder, like, you have to, you know, think before you speak, or instead of, you know, just being impulsive, just really thinking about how can you solve this problem before you, you know, try to escalate it, you know, those type of things.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is that the one thing you would have really worked on is like developing your conflict resolution skills.
Conflict resolution, and also just being more confident, not allowing anyone to make me doubt myself, you know, just coming in there. Like now I'm just like, look, this is me. And I think it also just has to do with your self-acceptance too, you know, accepting, that I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes. And also just holding myself accountable to certain things too. Mastering just that emotional intelligence part of understanding different perspectives, understanding like how to communicate effectively. I'm at this place where I want to be, wherever I'm at, whatever I'm doing, I want to be fulfilled. You know, I don't want to just do things just because at that time I feel like I was doing things maybe for the wrong reason. Because to say I'm a director, to say I'm this and that, versus it really being something that I truly really want to do. I feel it's a mixture. It's a mixture of different things. I did actually have an opportunity to be in another leadership role. It took me a while because I was like, I don't want to do this. But I think it was a good step. I went out and I was like, oh, I'm going to apply. It was a position at my current company. I was like, I'll apply for it. And that's when I really realized I was like, okay, you still have maybe a little bit more work to do with this, just because it did kind of bring up some old wounds when I applied for it and stuff.
What does the work look like? How are you working on restoring and recovering?
Me healing or helping myself, I was learning also to help other people, was through helping other people. And then hearing other people's stories, you know, and how they managed it. That really helped me tremendously, like really being amongst peers, women, Black women, you know, women who look like me, women who's been down the line of you know, dealing with either, you know, the men in the company and feeling like, okay, you know, that competition there. A lot of self-reflection, you know, really trying to, like I said, going back to trying to understand what makes me happy, what my purpose is. I learned what imposter syndrome was a few years ago. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was sitting and something. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm an imposter. I felt like an imposter because I'm just like, you know, you have to know that you have so much to offer and so many things that you can do, and you just want to sit in your shell. It's just like, no, come on, let's get out of that.
And so even though you stepped away, it really sounds like you have taken that time to cultivate, to develop, to figure out where your blind spots were, and really strengthen yourself as a leader. And I honor you for that.
Thank you. Awesome. You know, healing, going through this journey, like I feel like everything happens for a reason. And that's one of the things is like when I look back, before I was pointing fingers at, they did this, they did that, they treated me But now I'm just like, okay, what did you do? Or how did you bring on certain things? Just really taking a different look at it. And even now in my current job, even there were some rough patches there just because some of those things, like I said, came back and I was like, nope, we're not going to handle it that way. We're going to handle it a little differently. Fix your attitude, fix your posture, don't let what happened before happen now. Like, don't let things get so much in your head to where you forget who you are.
How do you think your earlier experiences in the workforce shaped your beliefs about leadership?
Early on, like one of my particular roles in the federal government, and I was a very young attorney, and it wasn't the most welcoming environment, but I learned to navigate. So I learned from people who were very different from me, and I was kind of naive because I expected those who looked like me to be more supportive and welcoming, and they weren't. That was a learning experience as well. So part of the experience also taught me to learn how to influence and how to lead without having direct authority, which is often the case. And especially once I ended up in large corporations, you often have to manage and influence people without having direct authority.
What sparked the fire inside of you to step into leadership for yourself?
I don't know that there was a specific thing. I think I had a tendency, from a young age to lean into it. And so where others wouldn't step up, I wanted to get things done. And so I think that part of the foundation is I'm focused on the outcome and what's the goal, what's the plan. And if others aren't doing it, I'm just going to lean into it. And I think that kind of drove me further.
How would you describe your leadership style?
Tell your story.
Okay.
I was leaving an organization that I had been for a while. I was changing roles. And the group, there was a large group of the African American employees wanted to do a special celebration. And this was during COVID, so we were all on Zoom. It was all kind of accolades, and I was really touched. And then someone said, who can tell the story the first time GMH, that's what they called me, made you cry? And I was shocked. I was like, oh my God, how many people raised their hand and said I made them cry? And yet these were the people that I was closest to, that I mentored, that I sponsored, that I made sure, they got advanced in the organization. But to a person, they talked about that I made them cry. And so, then we explored that a little more. At the end of the day, I can be very direct. And so there was quite a bit of that I could temper how I dealt with them, how I responded to them. And so that was a bit of an aha. But my leadership is such that I am very direct. I'm very clear, very transparent on my expectations. But I'm very supportive at the same time. And so those same people that I made cry, they too have gone on to become very successful and very strong leaders.
Wow. So what did you do with that information? Like, how did that change you?
Not much.
So
quite candidly, though, it did make me more sensitive, more attuned, more self-aware. And so more attuned to the impact that I can have, and that I'm often having that conversation that our intent can be one thing and our impact is different.
Absolutely.
And so I'm mindful of it, but I'm still very direct. And so for me, it's very important that I give face to the unseen. And so I've had the opportunity throughout my career, especially with women, Black women, to pull them out where others are passing them by. And so I've been able to create opportunities for people where, again, they've been the unseen. And so that's a foundation for me. That's a key value.
How do you navigate the stereotypes that tend to be placed on us as Black women?
I've carried them. I've been okay with them. I know behind the scenes, I've been the angry Black woman, and all of those kind of things. I've been able to navigate them nonetheless. And one of the things that I think that is so key is I've always been big on preparation. So I over-prepare. Often to hear about people who are the smartest in the room. Yes, I own that. And I would never be intimidated. Predominantly white male environments that I've been at the table. I've been the only one looking like me. And yes, I felt very confident, not just because I'm smart, but I was prepared. And so taking that confidence into the room with me enabled me to not be intimidated by others who want to put us in a box and pigeonhole us. Really, it was hurtful. Again, when I was young and naive, and I expected, everybody's going to love me. Not. But so you take it in stride, try to be empathetic, and understand what is the source of that. And I came to understand a lot of that in those early days was because I was the young attorney. I got a lot of responsibility early in that role. There was a lot of faith in me and my competency. And those other people had been there for a long time and were not at the same level. And so once I was able to build that empathy, I could manage through it and not be so very bothered. But for anybody, coming into the workplace and you're constantly having to deal with wherever the source, negativity, it's draining.
You shared that you have become more empathetic and also more sensitive. So it sounds like you've really softened as a leader. How has that improved your productivity? How has it improved your work relationships, if at all?
Yeah, I don't know that it's so much my productivity, but I think the relationships, I think the openness, various people reaching out to me more, that they may have been hesitant in the past. So I think me toning it down and being more welcoming, if you will, has helped.
So would you say you create a safer work environment?
I think so. I think so. I know that is one of your words, and I told you when we first met that you have this calming effect.
Thank you.
And so, yes, I strive to create a safer space.
Why is that important to you now?
Because I get it, and that if you are more aloof, if you are more closed off, it does have an impact on people. And especially if you're trying to lead a team, especially a very diverse team, as I tend to do, that can be intimidating. It's counterproductive. And so the more that you can create that welcoming, safe space, be more calming like you, that it can certainly be beneficial and far more productive.
Tell me about one mistake you feel like you've made in the workplace and what you've done to kind of course correct that.
I took a role, a very prominent role, very political environment, and it was not the best fit for me. And so in that, one of the learnings is really doing your diligence and knowing before going in, are these the people that I want to work with? And are these the people that I want to develop a relationship with? Are these the people that I trust? We don't all have the luxury at different points in our careers. Sometimes we have to stick it out. We have to suffer through.
Absolutely.
Because we have a family. We have 4 children who are not in college and out of our homes yet.
Correct.
Things like that we have to make those choices.
Yeah.
But at the same time, knowing where you draw the line and being prepared. And so learning for me is really doing your diligence and knowing before you go in, you know, where am I going to draw that line?
What would you say to a woman that is wanting to step into leadership but is afraid? Like, what words of wisdom or what words of advice would you give that woman?
Knowing your why. Why do you want to step into leadership? And sometimes it's just money. You know, I want to make a lot more money. And that's fair, but know if that's your why. How do you want to be seen? How do you want to show up? What kind of leader do you want to be? And who are some of the leaders that you admire? And that's how you prepare. How do you emulate them? Because there's really not one size fits all.
Yeah.
And you have to be comfortable in your shoes. But I would start with what's your why? Why do you want to lead others? And why should anybody follow you?
Thank you for making me a better leader.
Well, thank you for making the safe space for me. I appreciate you. I sacrificed some time and energy. Some of it was, in fact, friendships. I'm even hesitant to say friends because at the end of the day, they weren't friends. So really, in reality, you know, your friends are your ride or die. And that was one of the learnings that came out of a leadership role gone bad, because that's who you know who your true friends are, and the people who come forward and stick by you, the sisters who call and say, let's go to the spa right now. So those are the ones that wrap their arms around you, and that's the learning. You clean house with some of those other associates. So you learn to clean house, you learn not to look back in that rear mirror, and you leap forward with those ride or dies who showed up. I don't regret anything but my time and energy, having to not do some things that, you know, with family, being apart, not spending the amount of time that I may have wanted to. But at the same time, it provided me a lot of opportunities. So traveling the world. If I had said no to a lot of those things, I wouldn't have those opportunities and experiences. So I think there's always trade-offs, but I don't regret anything, but I do think there was some missed time that you can never recover. So I think it's a double-edged myth in that you see prominent Black women in roles, and so there are some who hold the belief that, oh, Black women have arrived. Black women have plenty of power. And they do in certain areas, in certain roles, but the same way once Obama became president and it's just like there's no racism anymore. Well, we know how that's playing out, right? And so that's the big myth. There are far more Black women in particular, but women of color in prominent roles in the workplace. They have advanced, but they're not compensated the same way and at the same level. And so compensation is still not equitable. And then the other part of that myth is that Black women can't run things. And so we challenge that every day. And you see, especially with the entrepreneurs, women in particular, Black women especially, the entrepreneurs are growing at an incredible rate. And so we can run things. To not have to get up every day and second guess your move. The freedom of not having to think every step you take is another chess move, that you can just get up and live your life daily, to have that freedom to show up any kind of way, look any kind of way, think any kind of way, do what you want. That's the world we're striving for. But right now, every move we make, we think twice, we think thrice to be better.
Who you want, PK?
Gosh, give me Tiarra.
A personality. It gives direct leader. But you can still see the softness.
But I would not think that she was this direct, phenomenal lawyer from this though. I would say include the frontline staff in the policies that's being made. Let them see and hear their voices. Their opinions matter, instead of CEOs and chiefs making decisions and they are so far removed from the front line that they don't even know what's happening here. They don't know the impact of the decisions that they're making that is having on the frontline staff. So just value their voices, include them in the policies and procedures that's made.
In addition to that, they should also have some type of support services representative, because I think a lot of organizations, they put titles and numbers to employees, and employees are humans, and we have to remember that when we are making these policies and procedures, that they are humans and they have lives beyond the organization.
Mm-hmm. I think an additional thing that organizations could do is really start to move away from systems of hierarchy. I think that it really creates a lot of division and a lot of disconnect. You know, even when I have seen organizations try to bridge the gap, it's almost like frontline employees don't even trust the people higher up. What if we didn't have those systems and we just created an equitable environment where it was people that all came together with the same goal in mind?
I think it starts with the organizations that we work for. I think as they're interviewing us, we should be interviewing them. We should be doing our research and seeing how do they hold space for their employees. Will I have a voice here? Or do I just have to come to the organization and get in where I fit in and go along with the system that's already in place?
I think it's important for women to make sure that they're surrounded by community, and community that looks like not only where they are, but where they want to be. And I think that will help give them the confidence or voice that they need. Like when we listen to Jerry is a very stern leader, but she's a good leader. Like I know she can get the job done. And so having someone like what you want to be in your corner, I think will definitely help a little bit.
I think that is such a great question, because that is the reason why this project is so important. Because one of the challenges is we don't know that we can choose ourselves. And that's why I love Danielle's story, because it really is like when it comes down to it, it's this job or it's me. I'm going to choose myself. And I think that as women, that is how we take our power back. Like we have to let people know, hey, I know I need this job. I need the income, but at the end of the day, I'm going to choose me. And a lot of us are so afraid because we need the income that it's like we just kind of surrender and we stay in unhealthy environments because we don't feel like we have the power to make demands, or not even demands, just to ask to be treated as humans.
I would love for them to remove the sense of having to get approval from your current supervisor to apply for the next level position. Because if we think about Tina was prepared, she had the skill set, she was confident, she went into that meeting, and the very first opening line was, you're not good enough and you're not ready. And to sit on that for 15 years, and now I'm finally equivalent to the person who told me that I wasn't good enough, we gotta remove that policy.
I don't know if it's possible, but I like it. I like it.
We could try. We got to start somewhere.
Yeah, you definitely have to trial and error. It's I'm here for it. I like it.
Like create an environment where advocating for yourself is the standard. Like advocate for yourself. If you believe you have the skill set and the capability, that's enough for us. Let's put me on a track and a plan so I can meet what you think I need to have, but don't just shut me down for 15 years.
I think I would like to see work environments move toward a more person-centered approach. I think sometimes we go into work environments that have a standard, right? And they want to make people fit into the standard instead of like identifying a person and allowing them to operate from their strengths and creating a path that supports their growth and development, right? Like I think about Ty. What if she had been in an environment that really supported her and that kind of taught her how to become a better leader, instead of her enduring this traumatic environment and having to step away from leadership completely? What if somebody saw her potential and was like, you know what, we see it, let's cultivate it and help you grow and evolve into a better leader?
I think leaders need to embrace that they are dealing with human beings. Like, we know the organization, the corporation wants productivity, but there's a person that has to do this. So we have to secure the entire person. We can't just focus on the 8 hours that they're at work. The happier I am at home, the happier I will be and the more productivity I will have on the job. But if you just focusing on the productivity and you want me to cut it off when I walk in the door, that's just, we're human. That's not how we operate.
So with that, I'm totally with that. But how do you separate maybe a professional relationship from a personal relationship? Because I think in order to see a person, you have to get to know them. Right. You have to know what triggers them.
I think you got to know yourself. Like, I'm human. I want the same grace.
That's true.
I want the same understanding. I want the same opportunities. I want you to understand, like, hey, this happened at home, but I'm here. Work with me. Allow me to get through this. Not just, are you due? This is due. Have you done it yet? Like, what it takes for me to get that done is real.
It really reminds me of what PK was saying. In her interview, I was sharing with her, like, I really love the way that she operates as a leader. And it really was from like a grace-based place and like really encompassing the whole human, right? Like you can expect somebody to do something, but also let's take inventory of what they have going on. Let's take inventory of their temperature. Where are they? What do they have going on in their house? You know, in their, like you said, at home. So then it's like, yeah, we still need to get this work done, but do we have another team member that can support them in doing it? Like really creating a culture of caring about people and not just the work.
I think that goes back to what I said, do your research and find out what's already happening in the place before you step into it. Before you accept a position, you should be doing your research and knowing, especially if you are a person who needs that support. Like some people can come in those environments and thrive. And then there's other of us who just, like, if I'm not going to be supported emotionally and as a whole person, that environment isn't going to be conducive to me. So I think really doing your research, knowing the corporations that you're going to work for, explore those leaders that's in place. Do they have diversity? Is there someone there that looks like you that you can find an ally in, hopefully?
I think my call to action, to piggyback off of something you mentioned earlier in the process, is to continue to do your own internal work, to hold ourselves accountable and to check ourselves on how we're showing up and to continue growing and evolving and developing our skill set. You know, as a therapist, I think about the things that were relevant when I first entered into the field and the ways that I have really learned to soften, to communicate, to be more empathetic, and to be more inclusive. And I think, especially in the work environment, people use the language, but don't actually implement and don't apply. Feedback. If you are not receiving feedback from the individuals that are engaging in the process, then you don't know if it's effective or not. And companies love to offer something just to say we offer this, but not really do the work of checking in on the effectiveness of it or how people feel as they're moving through it. It's just like, we offer the program and then that's it. It stops there.
I think it has to be actionable trust. have to know that I can trust you.
As the employee?
As the employee, as the leader, as the organization, I want to know that I can trust who I'm interacting with. And I think the more trust that's there, the more we can build a relationship, the more I can look at you and value you as a mentor. Because I think that's what mentorship is. It's really building a relationship of trust.
And one thing that I think is really important is being able to name when you've messed up or when you dropped the ball. Right? Like being able to go back to people and say, hey, I know you said this and we said we were going to do this, but like as an organization, holding yourself accountable. How many times have you sat in a meeting where they inquired about what was important to you or what they got your feedback and did nothing with it? They dropped the ball. So I really value when organizations and leaders are able to say like, hey, I know we dropped the ball. How can we make this right? That rupture and repair process, I think is super important.
I would say it's okay to be soft. Your softness is not a weakness, it's a strength. That's something that people value in women is our softness. So use that as a strength. It's not always a weakness.
And I think opposite of that is you can be assertive without being disrespectful. You can advocate for yourself without feeling like, am I making it too personal? You need what you need, and it's okay.
I saw a lot of that in PK's and Jerry's story. Jerry's direct, but I think that in her delivery, it still came across as soft. But an order is an order. Like we still have instructions and directions to follow, and that's okay.
I don't think we're asking like for a pass to not get the work done. We want to get the work done. We want to be productive. We want to answer the call. We want to go above and beyond. But we do just want to be supported and valued and seen and heard.
As a whole.
As a whole, in any capacity that I show up, I hold the organization that I work for responsible for me, as I'm responsible for it. I represent the organization no matter where I am. I represent the organization. The organization should represent me wholly.
When I hear you say that, I am reminded of the fact that I know what we're talking about is really possible. In my own personal experience, I had an individual in leadership, my supervisor, who really embodied everything that we talked about. Like she was so soft and kind and just like this beautiful person. And she affirmed and validated and inspired everybody on her team. And it made us want to go hard for her. Like we wanted all of our work to be a reflection of her because of the way that she treated and cared for us as human beings. And still to this day, she is one of my friends.
I think that is what makes the organization work.
I agree.
The more you pour into us and make us feel whole, seen, valued, the harder we're going to work for you. It's like the teacher who was so tough on you in high school and you look back and you be like, that was my favorite teacher. How did that happen? Because that person cared for me. They saw who I was. They saw my potential versus telling me all of the things that I was not doing right.
I think on the flip side, for me and my own personal experience, I've had a supervisor like that, but then her supervisor then used that as a weapon. Whereas then she felt like she couldn't show up for us like that because it was us or her job security. So it's a tough thing to do nowadays, but I wholeheartedly agree with you. Like, and to this day, that one supervisor is my friend, but it's a tough place for them to be in, based on the culture that the organization has built.
Imagine the federal directors right now, the federal workers. They're getting directives that it's just like, I have no choice but to send this email. Or it's my family, it's my job, it's my career. And they have to make those decisions on the fly. They have to do what they have to do to save themselves, which everybody is going to do. You're going to save yourself. But I think if we cultivate an organization and an environment where we're all saving each other, it just makes for a better workplace.
I'm gonna have to go back to Danielle's story. I was inspired and motivated in her choosing her. There's a lot of sacrifice that come with that. It's a hard decision to make, but at the end of the day, you always have to answer for yourself, and you gotta do what's best for you.
And I think the most challenging things to do are the things that frees us and sets us apart. Like that's what catapults us to the next level. The things that when we push through that fear, when we go back to go forward, when we go down to go up. That is what we have to do. Like the things that's tough, make the tough decision. It may be we have to skip a check or two. You have to plan and prepare. If you know that you need to exit this place, then you got to start putting your money in order so you can do just that.
I agree. And I just want to highlight the fact that I know everybody doesn't have the privilege to be able to choose themselves. But I think Tamika mentioned it is imperative to plan, to create an exit plan, because the flip side of that is your health being impacted, your mental health being severely impacted. I see it every day where people are really, really struggling because of toxic work environment. And so that, you know, what we used to do, you just put your head down and go to work and get the job done. I think the long-term impact is a lot more severe and significant.
And when you say that, I thought about Tina.
Yeah.
A stroke.
Yeah.
Like she could have lost her life and they would have replaced her before they buried her. I cannot imagine being so sick from work. Well, actually, I take that back. I can't imagine. Because on Sundays, that was my experience. Sundays come and I start getting jittery. It's like Monday's coming and I don't even want to go to work. But I sacrifice because we need the money. I think corporations and the people that's there, men and women, we have to have some type of allyship. We gotta have some place that we can go to and feel supported. Or you're gonna the turnover is gonna be so great. Like, and that's the organization loses. If you're replacing people over and over and over and always hiring and can't hold on to people, you gotta turn in and look at yourself in the mirror and how you are running your organization. It's not everybody else's fault. Same for relationship. Like, you gotta look at you and how you are running the place.
I think a lot of men and women in the workplace hop on the differences that we have. Like a lot of men like to say they think logically and women are emotional. I think if we put those things to the side and focus on the work and the person, the whole person, then we can find some similarity and some common ground to get the work done. So I think we need to focus more on the common ground than our differences.
I think my call to action for men would be to educate themselves about their privilege and their access and to speak less and listen more. And my call to action for women would be to speak up.
Well, I think leadership is an action. It's not a title. It's how you show up. And most organizations view it as the title because clearly we all know that there's people in positions that's the leader but don't have the qualities and the skill set. And then the vice versa. They have the skill set and the qualities, but they're not the leader.
I think one of the ways that we may begin to see real success is by way of representation. I think Krystal does a beautiful job of that. Instead of us shrinking as Black women when the environments don't feel good, I think we are really being called to step into our power. And that means that we have to be in the room, we have to be in the space even when it's uncomfortable, and be change agents. Have a say in the policies and the culture and the environments that are being created.
I think she did that in believing in this project. And not only this project, but the She-Suite. I mean, she represents District 7, which is a majority Black community.
Underserved community.
Underserved and very undervalued, overlooked and all of that. And she has invited us to the table and given us opportunities to represent the community and their needs and wants. And we were able to take that and mold it into different ways to also make it an inviting environment and not just a handout. You know, we're including the community in a lot of decisions that we made by including all 8 of these women. For it to finally be safe is that we all accept ourselves. I think in workplaces, a lot of us feel like we have to show up as a different person and put our own self and our own beliefs and even our own situations behind us to show up for the job. But I mean, to feel safe, it means I can show up as me. Today, not a good day, but I'm going to show up for you. I just want you to hear me. And I want you to understand me when I say, okay, I may need a 5 or 10 minute break. Mm-hmm. That's what safe looks like for me. And I think that's what we're fighting for.
I think safety is an environment where DEI is the standard, where we're all diverse, where we're all included, and the equity that's given is equal and fair.
I think safety for me is being able to be in a space where I can embody my full existence. Mm-hmm. I don't have to disassociate or separate from myself in an effort to show up or be who or what the environment is calling me to be. You know, I think a lot, like you said, that acceptance and being able to operate in my strengths and tell the truth about my growth edges, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of times in spaces, it's like, you can't even say, I don't know how to do this, or I'm struggling with this. Can you support me? I want to be able to say, I have no idea what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Can you teach me? Mm-hmm. And not feel like that takes anything away from my intelligence or my existence as a Black woman.
Or even that my job is at risk, if I'm honest.
That part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We got this.
I feel great. I am excited for the platform that is being created for other women, not just for us. I am excited for the expansion, the opportunity for women, the networking, the collectiveness that will come out of this. And I'm just so happy to see Latoya and Tamika being midwives to help other women birth their greatness. Mm-hmm. So this is a movement, and I am elated with the movement because we're not women going at each other, but women speaking life into each other.
I am lukewarm. I know that what we are doing as a unit is making my ancestors proud, but I know this is just the beginning to maybe a struggle. There are not a lot of platforms being used to lift and inspire, and they don't all look like us. I'm worried about how we will be perceived because I don't want to come before anybody as the angry Black woman.
I'm just extremely humbled in this experience. Being a champion of women's voices, I want to make sure that I'm also doing my inner work. When you position yourself as a leader, you have to always go inside. Mm-hmm. And I know that's not easy. So I am totally grateful for everyone for being a part of this process. We knew that things may come up that could be traumatic for you all. And we wanted to make sure that we were providing a safe space holistically. We didn't want things to just come up and leave you with those feelings. So we want to assure that not only do we feel safe as creators and visionaries, but we wanted to make sure that the intention was set with safety. And this is why we were so happy to invite Tiarra. Like, you have done an amazing job of just holding space for us, and we're totally grateful for that.
Hope, endurance, beginning. This is the beginning of something. This is setting the tone for the atmosphere for what is to come. And I'm just, again, I'm so excited of what's going to happen futuristically from these efforts and from sowing into these women of this magnitude. So I would say hope. and endurance for Tamika and Latoya for what lines up next for them.
Healing. The process, everything just to bring this to light has been already a healing journey. Just being able to be vocal, feel anxious, but also excited. There's a great purpose in what we're doing right now.
I would say growth, and that attached itself to healing. I was in somewhat of a dark space, and connecting with Tamika and Latoya has been nothing but growth for me. I just want to thank Tamika, Paige, and Latoya for what they're doing. And don't ever change.
Never. My words would be secure and impact, collective impact. We are stronger. We are better together. And I want to show more of togetherness in a positive light.
I think as Black women, we extend a lot of grace to a lot of people. But sometimes we need to remember to extend that grace to ourselves, to feel the full gamut of emotions and feelings. And it's okay to be soft. It's okay to be gentle. It's okay to take a break. But just remembering that there's a long journey and there's a lot of heaviness in the world. So just to remember to be kind to yourself, to be kind to one another.
Victory.
Amen.
Love it. Yes. We're winning. We've won. We're going to keep winning.
I would say my word would probably be perseverance. So no matter what has come and what's to come, persevere through it all.
I have chills with victory.
Yes.
Because we don't know what each one of these women have been through to sit on this couch today. We don't know what we've had to overcome. And when she said that, I got chills because each one of these stories are unique, who have made us who we are. And we are an example of multiple victory reports.
I want to be softer during conflict because I think it's easy to say you hold space when everything's going good. But how well do you hold space in the midst of conflict? And I think God is stretching me in that. My partner will probably certainly agree. I just want to make sure that I'm always holding a safe space, not just when it's convenient for me, even when it's challenging and it's tough.
Patience and expectation, because I have to exercise that with other women. In the industry I'm in, everything is so fast paced, and if you don't move like this, you just miss out. And then I think sometimes my expectation of someone delivering it on a certain level where they may not be on that level. And I have to learn to discern that and not try to push them to a level that really they're not ready for, and understand their process through having patience.
We may have started, but it definitely will be no middle and nothing in between without y'all. So it is our platform. These are our stories. This is our community, our sisterhood. So I want y'all to remember that with anything that we do, it's ours. And Tamika is leader of that. And she's put that on me a lot because I'm good for all this math. But this is ours. Like, we wouldn't be here without you. You know, it just wouldn't work.
I believe that's the power of collective impact, and that's the importance of community. Like, we need that. We need sisterhood. It's a love language. It's not just something I feed off of it. That's where I get my energy from.
Hey, Tamika.